In the news tonight, 5 new cases announced. Fijians line up for passes. And PM visits frontliners.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Edwin Nunn.
Bulawinaka, Fiji. The Ministry of Health has announced 5 new cases of COVID-19 tonight. Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says the first 2 are close contacts of previously announced cases and were secured in quarantine facilities when they tested positive. He adds the third case is a former quarantined passenger who travelled from Papua New Guinea.
Fourth case is a 68-year-old male in Reki Reki. He tested positive after presenting to the Reki Reki outpatients department with cough and fever. We are yet to establish any direct link between this case and existing cases.
The Permanent Secretary says the 5th case is a border quarantine case. And Kritika Kumar is live now with us. Kritika, with these new cases, what is the area of concern?
Edwin, the Raki Raki case, which tested positive today, is of a great concern for the Health Ministry. The 68-year-old man tested positive after he presented himself to the authorities as he was having fever. The ministry is yet to determine whether he has links to the current cases or not. The close relatives of the man have also been tested and are now being monitored by the Health Ministry officials. Boundaries have also been erected in the province of Raki Raki. The Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, has also highlighted that case 111 is also a concern for the ministry due to his extensive movement history. Meanwhile, some people who were discharged from the Sani Hospital have been contacted and they have been tested as well. 82 of them have been tested and they have been ordered to stay at home. However, others will be tested soon. Edwin.
Vinaka Kritika, Fiji is at the early stages of experiencing a hike in positive case numbers. This was determined by the Health Ministry upon investigations into the recent cases announced this evening and earlier in the week. Dr. Fong says that strict lockdown measures will be determined tomorrow.
These last cases and existing unknown point to the widespread transmission in the community, we believe can be an early part of a fast rising upward curve in case numbers.
And the Health Ministry has completed the, Christina Uluwai is standing by live now. Christina, seems the authorities will get tough from tomorrow. What's caused this? We'll move on to the next story and see if we can catch up with Christiana later. The Health Ministry has completed the first round of screening in Cunningham and Narere, while 95% of Wainivula, Dombati, Tadirua and Makoi have been screened. Dr. James Fong says over 100,000 Fijians have been screened on the mainland.
About 144,747 people screened across Viti Levu and many more thousands to go. These screenings do work, especially at identifying high-risk contagious cases of COVID-19. But just because you've been screened doesn't mean you are clear to flaunt any of our restrictions.
And now we join Aquila Dama live. Aquila, high numbers indeed for screening, but does one round of screening mean those covered are out of the woods?
Edwin, as much as I'd love to answer that question with a yes, but unfortunately it's a no. Just because you are screened doesn't mean you are clear to flaunt any of the restrictions in place. Remember, screening is different from testing. It is far from the 14 days quarantine process as well. That is why high-risk areas will be screened multiple times, as someone screened once may become a viral carrier later on. These high-risk areas that Dr. Fong talked about earlier this evening, it includes Tavakumbu, Cunningham, and even Makoi. Now, Dr. Fong has clearly stated that screening will go back and forth in these high-risk areas during this lockdown. In the lower-risk areas, screening will be done at least 2 times, as confirmed by Dr. Fong, Edwin.
Minakakwila, a day after the Ministry of Health laid stringent rules for movement across containment zones, people have been lining up at the ministry headquarters seeking permits. Authorities have made it clear that permits will only be given for funerals and medical emergencies. Apanisa Wangai Randovu reports.
We've given enough time for everybody to move into their homes.
A Suva businessman says he needs a pass to get his drivers back to Suva tonight.
Truck coming from Lambasa. It's on the way on Westerland. So by 11 o'clock, they'll be getting off at Natovi. So my drivers will be holed up at Longani checkpoint. So I need the pass urgently to take it there so that the drivers can bring the truck across to Suva.
We are also strengthening movement restrictions between containment areas. Everyone has had ample time to return to where they reside. So we don't expect public vehicles such as taxis or buses to cross containment area borders. As of now, all passes to facilitate movement across containment zones will be issued at the Ministry of Health and Medical Services.
Another claims his electrical business is part of essential services, hence he needs a pass.
Actually, yesterday I was here from 10 o'clock and I've been waiting here from 10 o'clock till 8 p.m. And they have told us that they're having the meeting.
Many of those lining up here are business people trying to keep their employees coming to work. Some already had a pass from police, but now they have to attain a new one following the announcement from the Health Ministry last night. Apinisonga Randovu, FBC News.
The Health Ministry has announced areas of interest in its efforts to track anybody who could have come in contact with those who've so far tested positive for COVID-19. People who were present at these venues and times have not been contacted are urged to call 158 and to remain at home. The areas include FNU Nambua, Burger King Nakasi, Nandera Catholic Church, BSP Thompson Street Branch, FNPF Ellery Street, Keynes Janif on Renwick Road, John Wesley School, Bargain Box opposite Suva Bus Stand, Ito KFA's office Suva Headquarters, Manodha Kava Pounding Shop in Nosori, Navwa Agriculture Office and the Ra Provincial Office and Compound. Prime Minister Voreng Bainimarama took time out today to check on many of the country's health workers and police officers at containment borders. Bainimarama visited frontliners at checkpoints in the Central Division. The Prime Minister also had a chat with some of the men and women at the forefront of the battle against COVID-19. Many were surprised to see Bainimarama and were encouraged by his presence. One of our closest allies, New Zealand, will be supplying 250,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to Fiji. Fiji has accepted this offer, which will come from New Zealand's domestic vaccine portfolio. New Zealand Associate Minister of Health and Foreign Affairs, Aupito William Sio, and Fijian counterpart Ifiremi Nbete says they are working together to support Fiji with access to safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines at the earliest opportunity. Both ministers stressed that there are still a number of steps to work through before the vaccine can be delivered, as it still has to be approved by MedSafe before it can be used in New Zealand and donated to Fiji. The ministers met virtually last week to discuss New Zealand's offer, which includes $2 million of official development assistance to support Fiji's vaccine rollout. Up ahead, charges for breach of restrictions. And religious leaders call for compliance. Welcome back. 3 men who were drinking in public yesterday and disregarded orders of the Public Health Act will have to pay $250 each or serve 25 days in prison. Poliasi Ndavetawalu, Chochi Vuli and Ngauna Halofaki appeared in the Suva Magistrates Court today, pleading guilty to failure to comply with the Public Health Protection Notice issued by the Permanent Secretary of Health. They were found drinking near the Narayan Jetty in Walu Bay, Suva, around 10 last night. They've been told to pay the fine within a month or serve their sentence in prison. The Public Health Protection Notice was gazetted to allow for strong action against those who breach the COVID safety laws. Meanwhile, 22 people from Nakalawada village in Tailevu breached restrictions by entering the Greater Longani area by sea. They appeared in court yesterday for failing to comply with the COVID-19 restrictions. The Namara villagers, including 11 women, were travelling in 3 separate boats on Tuesday, carrying a deceased person. All have been charged with 1 count each of failing to comply with orders under the Public Health Act. The Suva Retailers Association is calling on members who run essential businesses and are open to operate ethically. President Jitesh Patel says retailers must play their part and sell good quality items at a reasonable price. Patel adds business was running smoothly before the current restriction and many retailers were making gains. Kritika Kumar reports.
The Suva Retailers Association says the transitions after the restrictions will not be easy.
Once we open the shops again, then we'll be able to see and judge what the business is like, how long will it take.
Jitesh Patel says no one had budgeted or expected the lockdown. Therefore, many businesses are facing challenges.
Businesses have commitments like payment overseas. They're importing stocks at the moment. There are few ships that has just come into the port and they'll be required to clear those goods as well.
Patel has called on essential businesses to follow the COVID-safe measures. Permanent Secretary for Health Dr. James Fong has confirmed pharmacies and essential businesses such as food manufacturers can remain open.
Businesses that are not on the list of essential business or services should close.
Retailers are working together, overcoming challenges posed by COVID-19. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
Religious leaders are calling on followers to strictly adhere to COVID-19 protocols implemented by the Ministry of Health. They've acknowledged the work of frontliners and are urging the public to play their part to stop the spread of the virus. Lina Rees reports.
Following government restrictions, the Methodist Church of Fiji says it will also support the fight against COVID-19 through prayer.
It is beginning on the 1st of May and end on the 30th of June. So it is a 2-month fast and prayer. And I urge each one of us to adhere to that and let us put our hands together and pray for our nation and pray for each people.
Fiji Muslim League President Hafiz Khan says authorities know what they're doing and is calling on people to follow their instructions.
They know what they're doing. We have to follow the rules because it's very important that this thing doesn't get out of hand.
The Sri Sanatan Dharam Pratinidhi Sabha of Fiji has suspended all gatherings, telling its members to pray at home.
And I'm calling upon each of our mandalis and each of our pandits and all our religious group leaders, please pray for our people and pray for the, for the country as a whole.
The Ministry of Health has directed that no religious service be held until further notice as it works to contain the current wave of COVID-19. Lina Rees, FBC News.
The United Nations in Fiji is calling on everyone to support efforts to vaccinate the targeted population. While many have been forthcoming to get the jabs, the concern is more in relation to those who are still hesitant. Koroi Tandulala reports.
For us to be able to have the vaccines and have the opportunity to take the vaccine and then not take it, I think is a travesty.
With the more infectious B1617 variant now here, Fijians can't afford to be complacent about whether they want the jab.
Everybody who's eligible right now should be rolling up their sleeves and taking the jab, especially those with underlying conditions, those who are most vulnerable, but really every single person in Fiji, citizens and residents alike.
The Ministry of Health has repeatedly stressed that getting vaccinated is important. With the dangerous variant spreading, non-vaccination is putting more people at risk.
And right now we haven't vaccinated the whole population in Fiji above 18 years old. Thus the risk is still there for everyone else that's not vaccinated.
I think we've been rather complacent in treating this vaccine as an option because we were COVID contained for such a long time.
The latest batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine that arrived earlier this month is being administered to targeted high-risk groups. The next shipment under the COVAX facility is likely to arrive in a week. Koroi Tandulala, FBC News.
The suspension of face-to-face learning at tertiary institutions, which was initially for 3 days, will now last 2 weeks. Fiji Higher Education Commission Communications Officer Epineri Rawalai says in order to continue teaching and learning, they are encouraging institutions to use online platforms. Josiah Nanunga reports.
With the current safety measures in place, the Commission maintains that universities must consult the authorities on any decision taken.
Students are not to be unfairly disadvantaged because of limited accessibility to online resources.
The Commission is recommending higher education institutions across the country to arrange counseling or other support services.
Of counseling or other support services that students may access via email, telephones, or virtually during this extraordinary time, so that they can address psychological related issues.
We've had clients who are accessing our helpline to seek information, and also to describe how the lockdown is impacting them right now.
Rawalai says all tertiary institutions must have COVID-19 safe plans, which should now be activated in line with government directives. Josiah Nanunga, FBC News.
In the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, journalists have become the target of online attacks. Fiji Media Association General Secretary Stanley Simpson says despite the hard work that journalists do on a daily basis, they are being judged and targeted by social media users. Simpson says the nation is battling the second wave of the pandemic and journalists are working to keep Fijians informed.
As for journalists, they should just keep on doing their job. They should not let comments on Facebook or Twitter or people sitting at home making sarcastic comments deter them from doing their work.
Still to come, public health system fails in India. And UK sees improvements in cases.
Fiji Airways has extended its cancellation of all international repatriation flights into and out of Fiji. Flights are now suspended until the 9th of May after the initial date of the 2nd May. All domestic passenger flights operated by Fiji Link have also been cancelled until such time. The airline says dedicated international freighter services will continue to ensure vital export and import supply chains remain intact. The airline says the status of flights beyond May 9th will be determined later in line with government updates and directives. Here are the local exchange rates as set early this morning. The Fiji dollar finished strong against the Chinese yuan, the US dollar, euro, the Aussie dollar and the Japanese yen. It fell against the New Zealand and the PNG kina. Prices were mixed on the commodities market. Big jump for crude oil today, finishing at $64.10 a barrel. Gold made double-digit gains, closing at $1,786 per ounce. And a good day for silver as well, closing at $26.45 per ounce. We now join Gary from HFC Bank with the latest from the money market.
The latest Federal Open Market Committee meeting and press conference has come and gone with no big fireworks. The US dollar was on the defensive near 9-week lows today as a decidedly dovish outlook from the US Federal Reserve gave a green light for the global reflation trade. Fed Chair Jerome Powell crushed speculation about an early tapering of asset buying, saying it was not time yet to begin talking of it and employment was still a long way short of where it needed to be. Even the outperformance of the US economy had a sting in the tail for the dollar as it sucked in imports and drove the trade deficit to record highs in March. Later tonight, traders will shift their focus to US jobless claims, first quarter US GDP, and New Zealand's consumer confidence for April. It will be interesting to see how these data releases will have an impact on our Fiji dollar basket, if any at all. And that's all from HFC Bank. Naka.
The Nandi Hospital today received a boost in an effort to contain COVID-19. The Y Mile Liquor's Best Fish and Chips restaurant this morning handed over more than $500 to the COVID-19 isolation center. The doctors had requested assistance, to which the Nandi business gladly responded. They believe any help to frontliners is important as they try and contain the virus.
I'm very proud to doing this to the community of Nandi because the sickness is going on. If might be from my help, people will survive for this. So I'm very proud to come and do this thing from my heart.
That is the latest from my end, but coming up after the break, selling firewood to feed the family. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Some people living in Koroisaravi native settlement Nandi are thinking of relocating due to constant sea flooding they've been experiencing. The flooding is due to recent developments that have been a catalyst as waters have now even entered their homes. According to residents, there were no issues of flooding previously, but due to change in weather patterns and development work, coastal inundation has become a real issue. At least 30 homes are usually affected.
The sea flooding in this area has even killed our plantation because of the salt water. Before, this area never used to flood. It just happened a few years ago. Just this morning, even some vehicles couldn't come in because the whole road, it was underwater.
Our life is what we make of it. That's what drives Muhammad Farooq, who owns and operates a firewood business in Lambasa. Eleanor Turangavu has his story.
A former sugarcane farmer, Muhammad Farooq, now sells firewood for a living.
Because it's very hard, in Lambasa, you can't find any job.
Farooq started his firewood business in 2016. 2 years later, he was making as much as 200 to 300 bundles a week, selling them at $1.50 each to nearby homes and supermarkets. But business eventually slowed down when the COVID-19 crisis hit.
About 80, 100, like that.
But it's going slowly.
No, it's very slow.
Farooq orders logs by the truckload from the nearby villages. The 56-year-old cuts, splits, bundles the wood and delivers it with his son.
Not good margin there, but at least can survive my life and my children over here.
The father of three feels that with the COVID-19 crisis taking a toll on our economy and many losing jobs, it's up to us individually to look for sustainable ways to gain an income.
This hard time, this government can't just help everyone. You have to look some idea for your living set.
Farooq won't deny he's starting to feel his age, but with a family to support, his firewood business won't be burning out soon. Eleanor Turangaibiu, FBC News.
And tonight, FBC News speaks with Suva Retailers Association President Jitesh Patel about the impacts of the lockdown.
Just in terms of the restrictions that has been put in place, how has this impacted the businesses in the Suva CBD area?
The effect of these restrictions on the Suva CBD is quite huge, as most of the shops are all closed at the moment as per the restrictions done by the Ministry of Health, and most of the shops are abiding by that. So a lot of employees are staying home, loss of sales and is there, and also most of the retailers are closed, so therefore they can't do their normal work. So it's affecting everyday lives of everyone.
What are some of the plans that the association has for the business community?
For the business community, it's more like a wait-and-see game. It starts from day one. Since the lockdown, we're still paying rent for the shops that are there. And also, we are seeing this as We don't know how long this lockdown will be till, and once we open the shops again, then we'll be able to see and judge what the businesses is like, how long will it take. Like last lockdown, the businesses, some businesses took a hit, but some of them came out of it quite quickly. So it's more like how, when we open, then all we'll know how we move ahead.
Thank you. And lastly, what advice would you like to give to retailers who are currently open or for Fijians?
Yeah, well, I would like to say that we'd like to thank the government for what they are doing, especially the frontline people. They are playing a huge part in this contact tracing, all those things, and we really appreciate what they're doing. And we would like to ask all the retailers and all the people at home, please follow what Ministry of Health is saying.
And let's join Jamie now for the latest in sports.
Thank you, Edwin, and good evening. Ahead in sports. Well wishes from Flying Fijian. And skipper champs remain focused. This and more coming up. Well, there's some uncertainty with the current COVID-19 situation unfolding here. One of our stars flying the Fiji flag in Europe wants us to know we aren't alone in these challenging times. Flying Fijian Senta Waisiana Adelevo, in an exclusive interview with FPC Sports, sends his well wishes and is urging Fijians to stay safe. The Suva provincial team is not losing focus as its players continue to train separately. The defending champion will play Nandi in round 3 of the Skipper Provincial Cup once the tournament is given the green light to resume. Manager Nemani Tuifangalele says despite these challenging times, the team remains focused on its goals.
I think there will be a lot of restrictions given the atmosphere now and how COVID is actually, make its way back for the second round now in the community. So yes, we will at the same time adhering to all the regulations given. We would love to come back as a community of team to play and prepare ourselves against the stronger Nandi team.
The holder of 4 national records in track and field, Pramesh Prasad, has done it again. Prasad set a few more records at the Coburg Carnival in Melbourne, Australia. The 47-year-old reached the 100-mile mark in 20 hours, 43 minutes and 42 seconds. He recorded the fastest 6 hours, covering 52.693 kilometers. In 12 hours, he managed to complete 100.652 kilometers and also clocked the fastest 100 kilometers with a time of 11 hours, 49 minutes and 11 seconds to also win the Australian Championships. Manchester City came from behind to beat Paris Saint-Germain in the first leg of the European Champions League semi-final today. City scoring 2 crucial goals to not only win the match but to take a significant advantage into the second game. In today's play of the day, Kane Williamson's Sunrisers Hyderabad remain at the bottom of the Indian Premier League cricket ladder after losing to the Chennai Super Kings this morning. However, the New Zealand cricket captain had some magical moments in the match, including this one. From surfing dogs to one that can detect high or low blood sugar levels. More on this in Weird and Wonderful after the break. But for now, that's it from sports. Vinaka.
A trough of low pressure remains slow-moving over Vanuatu and gradually moving southeastwards. Associated cloud and rain continues to affect the northern and eastern parts of the group. In the west, cloudy periods with isolated afternoon and evening showers. Eastwards from Pacific Harbour to Suva, cloudy with some isolated showers. In the north, occasional rain and a few thunderstorms, rain gradually easing to showers later this evening. At sea, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, rough seas, moderate northwest swells, winds expected to ease to 15 to 20 knots later tonight. The next high tide is in about 30 minutes with low tide at 2:12 p.m. Sunrise will be at 6:23. For tomorrow, cloudy conditions with showers and isolated thunderstorms forecast. And the further outlook is for cloudy periods with some showers and isolated thunderstorms again. In Fijian Pulse, we are asking, what's your message to our frontliners in the COVID-19 fight?
I want to salute them for the great work they have been doing.
I want to say thank you and hope they are keeping safe during this time.
To all the frontline workers of Fiji, I would like to thank you so much for doing a marvelous job. You're leading us by example and keeping us free from this COVID-19.
To all the frontline workers, thank you for keeping us safe.
Now, dogs are a favorite in our Weird and Wonderful segment, and tonight it's a pup who can smell diabetes patients' blood sugar levels. And recapping our main stories, 5 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed. Fijians line up outside Health Ministry for containment zone passes, and Prime Minister visits frontliners. For these stories and others, you can tune in daily to our sister radio station Gold FM. To our poll question, this week we are asking, should face masks be made mandatory? Visit our FBC News website to answer. You can send us newsworthy pictures and videos, email fbcnews@fbc.com.fj, or share it with us via our various social media accounts, including Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can also download our FBC app to keep updated with the very latest news and sports and listen to our 6 radio stations live. That's your news this evening. I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Modemanda.